Hi, I'm Professor Mark Grabowski, and this video lecture will discuss broadcast law in America. In the United States, a federal government agency known as the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, is responsible for regulating the broadcasting industry. They regulate network TV stations such as CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox, along with AM and FM radio stations. In addition, the FCC also regulates communications by wire, satellite, and cable, which includes cell phones and internet service. The broadcast media are subject to far more government regulation than print media, and there are a few major reasons for this. The airwaves over which radio and TV stations broadcast are said to be owned by the public. In other words, the airwaves are sort of like public goods, such as the air we breathe or water we drink. Within each region, there are only a certain amount of airwaves available. That's why FM radio stations, for example, range between 88 and 108 megahertz on your radio dial. Because of this scarcity, the government is only able to hand out a limited amount of broadcast licenses and set standards for what stations must do in order to attain and maintain a license. Another reason why broadcast media is regulated is because it's widely available for free to anyone with a radio or TV, which is pretty much everyone in America. Unlike cable TV or satellite radio or the internet, you don't have to choose to pay to subscribe to it. So since network TV and AM/FM radio can be obtrusive, the government wants to ensure the content is not too unsavory. Broadcast law didn't exist until the 20th century or early 1900s. That's because radio wasn't invented until about 1900. Meanwhile, TV didn't really take root until after World War II, or around the 1950s. Speaking of history, did you know the sinking of the Titanic helped spur some of the country's first laws regarding radio? Yep, the Titanic wasn't just a popular movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. It was a real-life tragedy in 1912, and it was blamed partly on the lack of effective radio communication between ships. The other factor leading to the new laws was national security. The Army and Navy were concerned that there were so many amateurs and hackers using the airwaves that it could create a lot of clutter on the airwaves, which might complicate matters during wartime. So based on the Titanic disaster and military concerns, Congress passed the Radio Act of 1912, which gave the government the authority to issue licenses and assign frequencies to radio operators. Since then, Congress has revised that law several times. For example, in 1927, Congress created the agency which would later become known as the FCC to oversee radio. The 1927 revision also required broadcasters to act in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. In 1949, the FCC decided that serving the public interest meant that radio and TV stations should present controversial issues of public importance and do so in a manner that was honest, equitable, and balanced. So, for example, if a politician was attacked on a talk show, the radio station was required to give him or her a chance to respond on the show. In contrast, newspapers have never had to follow such a rule. As I mentioned earlier, broadcast media is more strictly regulated than print and online media. But in 1987, Congress decided to eliminate the Fairness Doctrine for broadcast media. So at the moment, broadcast media are not required to be honest and fair in their presentations of the news. But some lawmakers are trying to change that, saying that media bias and fake news have become a big problem. I'm not confident any new laws will be passed, though. Over the years, Congress has also adopted policies specifically aimed at protecting children who may be watching television or listening to the radio unsupervised. Some of the policies include limiting the amount and types of commercials that can be aired during children's TV shows, and requiring stations to show a certain amount of educational programs each day. In addition, Congress has also given the FCC the power to regulate what is known as indecency. During set hours of the day, when children are most likely to be watching TV or listening to the radio, stations are forbidden from airing curse words or nudity. Initially, the FCC would fine stations $500 for violating this policy. But as a result of a controversial Super Bowl halftime show involving Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson and a wardrobe malfunction in 2004, the FCC raised its fines for indecency to $500,000. That's right, $500,000. The significant increase in penalties forced shock jock Howard Stern to move his popular FM radio show to satellite radio, which was not subject to the same strict FCC rules. It also contributed to the rise of cable channels such as HBO, which became the go-to places for edgier TV shows. But some network broadcast companies felt the severe fines were unfair. It was one thing to require stations to bleep out bad words or scenes in movies or pre-taped TV shows, which they could anticipate. But sometimes it became impossible for stations to avoid indecency when airing live events, such as the evening news or sporting events. Consider these examples.
I know you were frustrated at how the officiating went down the stretch there, but you guys pulled it out and it was a big win.
David Stern wonder why the league is losing money. That's why. People pay good money to come watch these athletes play, and they try to take over the fucking game.
Shaq, we're on live. I know. Let me ask you this.
At 11, paying more at the grocer, but getting less. We'll tell you how to get the most. The fuck are you doing? We need to acknowledge an unfortunate mistake that I made, and one of the teases we bring to you before this program. While we were live, just after 10 o'clock, I said a word that many people find offensive. I'm truly sorry. It was a mistake on my part, and I sincerely apologize.
So Fox decided to challenge the FCC, and in 2012, the United States Supreme Court ruled in the station's favor. Technically, the FCC's indecency rules are still in place, because the court did not overturn them. But the indecency rules are essentially unenforceable because the court took away the FCC's power to fine stations for indecency violations. Many stations, however, have decided on their own to attempt to avoid showing nudity and cursing because they don't want to offend viewers and listeners. In the past 25 years or so, Congress has relaxed some of their broadcast laws. Specifically, in 1996, Congress passed the Telecommunications Act. Some of the highlights were that it relaxed rules for TV and radio station ownership. Previously, the law had frowned upon having a big media chain own many radio and TV stations because it was thought that it would hurt content and editorial diversity. But with audiences now getting their news, mostly from the internet, and the traditional media forced to consolidate to deal with declining audiences and advertising revenues, those old rules seemed antiquated. Another important measure of the 1996 Telecommunications Act was its impact on the internet and digital media. We'll discuss that more when we cover internet law. For now, this has been a summary of broadcast law in America. I'm Mark Grabowski. Thanks for watching.